How did ancient humans handle loneliness? Think about the last time you felt truly alone, not just physically alone, alone in the way that aches, the kind that makes you stare at your phone waiting for something, anything, to break the silence. That feeling has a name now, loneliness, and it gets treated like a modern problem, a product of city apartments and screens and lives lived behind glass. But here's what no one tells you. That feeling is not new, it is ancient, and your body was not built to suffer from it. It was built to survive it. For most of human history, loneliness was not a mood. It was a warning signal. The same as thirst, the same as pain. University of Chicago researcher John Cacioppo spent decades studying loneliness as a biological system, and his conclusion was blunt. Loneliness is not a character flaw. It is an adaptive alarm that evolved because isolated humans died. Predators, exposure, starvation. A lone human on the African savanna 200,000 years ago was not having a quiet evening. They were in danger. Real danger. Immediate danger. The ache you feel when your phone goes dark for too long is your nervous system running that exact same program. Still today, your body is not updated. It still believes that being alone means something is wrong, and it is trying to get you to fix it. Here's what's strange. Ancient humans almost never experienced what we would call chronic loneliness. Not because they were emotionally simpler, because the structure of their lives made sustained isolation nearly impossible. A typical hunter-gatherer band ran about 25 to 30 people. You knew every single one of them, not casually, deeply. Their histories, their habits, their debts, their grudges. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner, studying the Jew Huansi Bushmen of the Kalahari, found that adults in these camps spent hours every day in conversation, not passing small talk, real talk, the kind that tracked who had given what to whom, who needed help, who had been strange lately, who might be sick. That was not gossip in the trivial sense. That was the social operating system of the entire group, and it ran constantly. You were never not surrounded. You slept next to people. You cooked next to people. Your grandmother slept a few feet from your children. There was almost no such thing as being physically alone for long, and the few times it happened, people noticed. Quickly, loneliness in a hunter-gatherer camp was a short-term emergency, not a chronic condition. Somebody came to find you, but that does not mean your ancestors never hurt. They lost people. Grief is as old as love, and here's what they built to handle it. Ritual, the oldest known burial sites in the world, places like Skull Cave in Israel dating back 120,000 years, show evidence of intentional preparation. Bodies laid out carefully, ochre powder scattered, grave goods placed beside the dead. Someone took time, someone made meaning out of loss. Ritual is not religion, not yet. It is something more fundamental than that. It is the act of doing something together when words run out. Dancing, chanting, sitting close enough to touch. These were not just ceremonies, they were technologies for grief, ways of converting isolation back into connection, right at the moment when isolation was most dangerous. And it were kid not because it solved anything, but because it kept the circle intact when everything in you wanted to collapse inward and disappear. Here's where it gets stranger. The cave paintings at Lascaux in France go back roughly 17,000 years, and they were not made in open air. They were made deep inside the cave, in the dark, by torchlight, which means someone carried a flame down into the earth and painted in a space no one passing by could ever see. That was not decoration. Researchers now believe caves like this served as communal gathering sites, ceremonial spaces where groups came together during difficult seasons. The art was not made for strangers, it was made for each other. A shared world built in the dark that only your own people would ever find. And fire was the other piece, not just for warmth or cooking. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner studied how the Jew/Huansi use firelight differently from daylight. During the day, talk was practical. Tasks, planning, distribution. During the evening, around fire, the conversation shifted entirely. Stories, ancestors, people not present, futures that might never arrive. About 80% of nighttime conversation was devoted to what Wiesner called the social imagination. That is exactly how loneliness gets metabolized in a body like yours. You make the absent present, you tell their stories, you pull them back into the circle. And then there were the networks. Hunter-gatherer bands were small, but they were not isolated. Bands maintained active relationships with neighboring camps, sometimes dozens of them spread across hundreds of miles. These connections were kept alive through trade, through marriage, through regular visiting. Robin Dunbar, the British anthropologist behind what is now called Dunbar's number, found that humans can actively maintain roughly 150 stable social relationships. The average hunter-gatherer, by adulthood, knew somewhere near that number personally, not acquaintances, people with full histories, every one of them by name. You had a social web that most people alive today never build in an entire lifetime. And when someone in your band died or left, or a relationship broke down badly, you had redundancy. You had layers. You could walk to the next camp for a few weeks and come back when the grief had loosened. The Bushman called leaving during conflict voting with your feet. Not abandonment, not failure, just space and then return. Most of us cannot do that now. Mortgages, leases, jobs, schedules. We are physically anchored in a way our nervous systems were never designed for. And real isolation, when it did happen, was treated as a group emergency, not a personal matter, a community matter. In many hunter-gatherer cultures, someone who withdrew from the group and could not be pulled back was seen as deeply unwell, and the community had active responsibilities toward them. Shamans in these groups served partly as what we would today call mental health intermediaries, conducting rituals around people who were suffering, using music and physical presence and ceremony to pull someone back into the social body. The cure for loneliness was never internal. It was always collective. It was never about fixing the person alone in a room. It was about rebuilding the circle around them. That is not something you could do quietly, privately, on your own time. It required opal. It required showing up. It required the whole camp. None of this was conscious strategy. No one designed the Kung social mockery rituals, or the firelight storytelling sessions, or the cave ceremonies as deliberate responses to psychological suffering. It emerged because the groups that did these things stayed together, and the groups that stayed together survived winters, hunts gone wrong, children lost, droughts that lasted years. The ones that fell apart left no one behind to remember them. What you have inherited is not just a body and a brain. You have inherited 300,000 years of social technology, refined by every generation that made it through. The need you feel to be known by someone, to be close to people at the end of the day, to tell stories in the dark and hear another voice answer back. That is not weakness. That is the oldest survival system your species ever built.